Welcome back to the Motivated Mind Zone. Glad to have you here. Today, we are taking a hard look at something that's almost treated like gospel in personal finance circles. Compounding interest. You know, we've all heard it, right? Let your money work for you.
Mm-hmm. Sounds so easy, so automatic.
Exactly, like this guaranteed path to getting wealthy. Just set it and forget it. But, the sources we looked at for this deep dive, they show a much more complicated picture, maybe even an uncomfortable one.
They really do. The myth is that compounding is this magic wand,
Yeah.
works the same for everyone right from day one. But the reality, what the research actually shows is that your money, it often kind of refuses to work unless you give it a pretty big paycheck first.
A big starting amount, you mean?
Precisely.
Hmm.
Compounding is, at its heart, just a multiplier. And if you're multiplying something close to zero, well, your progress is going to be incredibly slow, like watching paint dry.
Right. Glacial, you called it. So when you really break it down, especially if you're starting small, compounding can feel like one of the slowest, honestly, most demoralizing ways to try and build wealth at the beginning.
It absolutely can be.
So our mission today is to cut through that hype. We want to understand the real mechanics, the sometimes brutal math, and crucially, why that starting amount, the principle, makes such a huge difference in how fast things take off.
And most importantly, what practical steps you, if you're that starting investor,
Yeah.
actually need to take. How do you get that financial snowball? Well, how do you even get it started rolling?
Because it's not magic.
Definitely not magic in the early days. We need to set the right expectations for you, the listener. Look, the power of compounding isn't fake, it's absolutely real. But its initial kick depends entirely on the fuel you give it.
Fuel being the money you put in.
Exactly. If you're starting near zero, the strategy you need for, say, the first 10 years, it's got to be completely different. You need to be aggressive on the input side, putting money in, not dreaming about massive returns.
Okay, let's dive right into that early phase. The part where, frankly, a lot of people just give up. It's that psychological letdown, isn't it?
It really is.
The basic idea sounds simple enough. Interest, earning more interest. But when you actually look at the dollars and cents you earn at the start, it can feel almost insulting.
Painfully slow is the term I'd use.
Yeah.
And that lack of visible, meaningful progress, that's the #1 reason new investors bail. It makes perfect sense psychologically.
How so?
Well, think about it. We're wired to want feedback,
Yeah.
right? You put in effort, you expect to see some kind of result, some reward. Compounding right at the beginning it doesn't deliver that feeling at all.
Okay, let's make this concrete. The source material had a good example. Let's say you do everything right. You manage to save up $100.
Okay.
And you invest it. And you even get a fantastic return, 10% a year. Most pros would be happy with 10% consistently.
Absolutely. That's a solid return.
So after a whole year, 12 months of discipline, your $100 earned you, drum roll please, $10.
$10.
Yeah.
Yeah. Technically, okay, your money is working, but let's be real, $10. That barely gets you a decent sandwich and a soda these days.
And that's the disconnect, isn't it? That's the cognitive dissonance. You've heard this is the key to getting rich, the secret sauce.
Right.
And your actual payoff after a year feels totally trivial compared to the effort it probably took you to save that first $100.
And this is where the typical advice about compounding needs a serious reality check. That $10, it's not changing your life.
Yeah.
Factor in inflation, and like you said, maybe you even lost a bit of buying power.
So people hear market returns, they commit, they put the money in, check back in a year and think, wait, all that for this? Enough for one small purchase?
That feeling, it's like poison to long-term discipline. It doesn't feel like, oh, my money's working hard for me. It feels more like,
Yeah.
like you're stuck in traffic, maybe in a tiny little car, watching Ferraris with huge engines just zoom past you.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
And that feeling,
Mm-hmm.
it breeds frustration,
Yeah.
discouragement. So what happens? People either just quit altogether or worse.
Worse.
They start chasing really high-risk stuff, crypto, long shots, penny stocks, whatever, promises, massive returns fast because they're desperate to force that acceleration that compounding isn't giving them yet.
Let's unpack that giving up part a bit more. Someone follows the advice, start early. Let compounding do the work. Maybe they're diligent savers, they scrape together $500.
Okay, $500. Decent start for many.
They invest it, maybe get an 8% return that year. After 12 months, it's turned into $540, a $40 gain.
$40. Again, mathematically sound. It worked.
But practically, that $40 doesn't solve any real problems. It doesn't pay a significant bill. It doesn't give you that warm, fuzzy feeling that your financial future is suddenly secure. It just sits there.
And the reason is the nature of that exponential growth curve. When the base number, your starting principal, is tiny, the exponential part, the curve upwards, it's practically invisible. It looks like a flat line.
So in that first year, with the $500 turning into $540, how much of that $540 is actually from compounding?
Well, $500 is what you put in. Only $40 is the return. So like 92.5% of the money in the account is still your contribution. Compounding only kicked in about 7.5% of the total value. You are the engine. The returns are barely a whisper at this stage.
That famous snowball effect analogy. Maybe it needs a disclaimer for beginners.
It definitely does. The sources really hit this point. In those first few years, you're not pushing some giant snowball down a hill. You're more like pushing a tiny, dusty little pebble up a hill. It takes effort just to keep it from rolling back.
So the real momentum, the part where it feels like a snowball, doesn't happen until much later.
Years later, and critically, only if you keep relentlessly adding more snow yourself. That means consistent, ideally increasing contributions, especially in those early slow years.
Okay, so the big takeaway for someone starting small.
If you're starting small, focusing on the investment returns, watching that tiny number grow, that's setting yourself up for disappointment and failure. The psychological trick, the mental reframing you need, it's this. You're not really investing for returns right now.
What are you investing for then?
You're investing to build the habit, to establish the discipline, and, most importantly, to pile up that initial chunk of capital. The early years are purely about accumulation, piling it up, not about acceleration, watching it grow fast. Accepting that hard truth, that's step one to actually sticking with it long enough for it to work.
All right, so we've established the often frustrating reality of starting small. Now, let's flip the coin. Let's talk about the dazzling, maybe even unfair side of compounding, financial acceleration. This is where we see that huge gap open up based purely on how much you start with.
This is absolutely critical to understanding how wealth really builds up over time. Compounding, it doesn't care about your effort or how much you want it. It just cares about the size of the number it gets to multiply.
So the same interest rate can have wildly different results.
Dramatically different, in absolute dollar terms anyway. It really shows why compounding is fundamentally a multiplier. It just amplifies whatever wealth is already there.
Okay, let's get specific. The source data had a really clear comparison, the 8% decade comparison. This really lays bare how efficient capital becomes once it reaches a certain scale.
Right, so we're looking at the exact same, pretty achievable 8% annual return. Same time period, 10 years. But two very different investors.
Investor A starts small. Let's say they invest $1,000 at 8% a year.
Okay. After those 10 years, their $1,000 grows to roughly $2,158.
So they made about $1,158 in profit. They more than doubled their money, which percentage-wise sounds great.
It does sound good on paper, percentage-wise. But that $1,158 gain spread over a whole decade, what does that really buy you? Maybe covers one or two unexpected bills, an emergency car repair, perhaps?
It's growth, sure, but it's not the kind of life-changing wealth people often associate with the idea of compounding, is it?
Not at all. Now, let's look at Investor B. They start with significant capital, let's say $100,000.
Okay, $100,000, same 8% annual return, same 10 years. What happens?
Investor B's $100,000 grows to over $215,000. So their profit, the money earned just by letting that initial sum sit and compound, is $115,000.
Wow. Okay, let's just pause on that. Investor A made about $1,100 profit. Investor B made $115,000 profit.
Exactly. Same interest rate, same amount of time locked away. But the difference in pure profit is, what, over $113,000?
That's staggering.
That is the acceleration effect. That larger starting base lets the exponential curve finally start doing its thing. You start seeing that upward sweep.
And it's not just math, is it? It feels like it explains a lot about, well, about how wealth works in the real world. It really demonstrates that saying, the rich get richer.
It's one of the core mechanisms behind it, yes. It connects directly to how wealth inequality can widen over time.
Yeah.
People or institutions with large portfolios, they've hit this critical mass, this scale.
Where the multiplication just takes over.
Takes over powerfully. The returns become so large in dollar terms that they generate an income stream that's as big as, or even bigger than, a good salary. And crucially, it requires zero ongoing work from the owner. The money is doing all the heavy lifting.
Let's put some numbers on that income contrast. That makes it really clear. Imagine someone has a $1 million portfolio. And let's be conservative. Say it earns a steady 7% a year.
Okay, $1 million at 7%. That portfolio spins off $70,000 in income every single year.
Right.
Without ever touching the original $1 million.
$70,000. Passively. That's more than the median household income in many places, right?
Yeah.
And it requires no active work.
None. Think about the time saved, the stress avoided. That's a comfortable living for many, just from the money itself. Now compare that to our investor A from before, starting with $1,000, also earning 7%.
How much do they make annually?
$70 a year.
Okay, $70 versus $70,000.
Yep.
Yeah, that lays bare.
It's not just a couple of extra zeros. It's a fundamentally different reality. A different set of choices, different levels of freedom. It highlights that, mathematically sound, but maybe tough to swallow reality. Compounding isn't some instant shortcut for everyone. It's really a reward.
A reward for what?
A reward for already having a significant amount of money. Or, maybe more relevant for most listeners, a reward for the incredible discipline and consistency it takes to build up that significant principal amount in the first place.
So that initial climb, that accumulation phase is just massive.
It's the biggest hurdle. Once your principal gets past a certain point, maybe it's $50K, maybe $100K, depends on the return rate, that's when the percentages start spitting out really noticeable, potentially life-altering dollar amounts.
But until you hit that threshold.
Until then, compounding feels like this promise that's always just around the corner, but never quite arriving. Purely because the dollar gains are just too small compared to the effort you're putting in just to save the money initially. It feels anticlimactic.
Okay, so if the starting amount is the absolute king, and most of us can't just snap our fingers and have $100,000 appear, what's the actual strategy? What do you do if you're starting small?
Well, the sources are pretty clear on this. It requires a major shift in focus, a fundamental change in perspective.
Away from
Obsessing over investment returns. Stop worrying about whether you get 7% or 8% this year. Stop trying to time the market or find the next hot stock.
And shift focus towards
what you can actually control, your personal contributions. You need to get aggressive, maybe even ruthless, about how much money you are consistently putting into the account.
So it's less about watching the market and more about watching your budget.
Absolutely. It's a behavioral shift. You have to accept, maybe for the first 10 years or even longer, that you are the primary engine of growth, not the market. Your savings rate is your superpower.
I like the seed analogy the sources use for this. Can you share that?
Yeah, it's quite good. Think of it like planting seeds. If you just plant one single seed, eventually, maybe years down the line, you get one piece of fruit.
It takes forever, and the payoff is tiny.
Right. But what if you plant dozens of seeds? And you don't just plant them, you water them regularly. That's your consistent contributions. And you wait patiently. Eventually, you don't just have one fruit tree, you have a whole garden and orchard throwing off fruit every year.
So the key is the volume of seeds planted and the consistent watering.
Exactly. Consistency over chasing a slightly higher rate of return. Compounding loves being fed new money regularly. You can't just put in $100 once, walk away for 30 years, and expect financial freedom. That's the myth.
You have to combine time with contribution.
Relentless, ideally increasing contribution. And the data, it just screams this point. Increasing how much you contribute is the single most powerful thing a starting investor can do.
Okay, let's see the numbers again. Same 30-year time frame, same average 8% return, but let's change the monthly input.
Right, so investor A puts in $200 every single month. For 30 years, at 8%, they end up with around $280,000.
Which is fantastic. I mean, building over $250,000 just through discipline, that's a huge win.
It absolutely is. Don't diminish that. But now, look at the power of just increasing that input. Investor B decides they can stretch and put in $400 a month. Double the contribution.
Same 30 years, same 8% return.
Exactly the same conditions, just double the monthly saving. Investor B ends up with over $560,000.
Wow. Double the input, double the final amount.
Pretty much spot on. And how do they achieve that? Not by finding some secret high-risk investment that returns 16%. They just chose, through discipline or finding ways to earn more, to save and invest more each month.
So the lesson for someone starting out is?
The magic, if you want to call it that, isn't in squeezing an extra 1% out of the stock market, which is hard and often involves more risk. The real magic is in boosting the volume of money you're pouring into the account. We call this the savings rate multiplier.
The savings rate multiplier. Explain that a bit more.
It's simple conceptually, but really profound in practice. In those early years, let's say the first 10, maybe 15 years of investing, the vast majority of your account balance, it's just the money you put in. The returns are a small fraction.
Okay.
So if you double your savings rate, you're effectively doubling the main driver of your account growth during that crucial period. Doing that has a much, much bigger impact than, say, increasing your annual return from 8% to 9%.
So contributions outweigh returns in the beginning.
Massively. This is like expert consensus based on the math. For the first decade at least, your contributions matter way, way more than your returns. The return rate only starts to dominate the growth later once the account itself is substantial. Until then, your savings rate is your growth rate, effectively. You are buying your own growth.
This also kind of explains why sometimes people who are already wealthy seem to have boring investment strategies, doesn't it?
Totally. They're not desperately chasing the next big thing. They don't need to.
Yeah.
Because their base number, their principal, is already huge.
Right.
If you have, say, $500,000 invested,
Okay.
you can afford to be super conservative. You can aim for a boring but reliable 5% return. Why? Because 5% of $500,000 is still $25,000 a year.
Passive income, reliable.
Exactly. $25K you can pretty much count on. Without taking huge risks, the math is already working beautifully for them.
But the beginner, they see their $1,000 growing at maybe 5% or 8%.
And they get impatient. They think this is too slow. So maybe they take a flyer on something promising 15% or 20%, high risk.
And even if they get lucky and hit that 15% on their $1,000,
That's the gain, $150. They took on massive stress, huge risk of losing their capital, $450. The risk-reward calculation is totally skewed for the beginner trying to juice returns on small amounts.
so the focus for the beginner shouldn't be beating the market.
No. It should be, first, don't lose money. Second, get consistent, reasonable returns. And third, and most importantly, focus relentlessly on growing the base pile. Shovel money into the account.
Get that principal up.
Get the principal up to a point where those boring returns actually start generating meaningful, life-changing amounts of dollars. You're trying to build the foundation so that the boring, reliable strategy eventually becomes incredibly powerful for you.
Okay, let's bring this right down to ground level. Someone listening is thinking, okay, I get it. Principal matters most at the start, but I am starting from zero or close to it. What's the advice then? How do you survive that slow, demoralizing start?
Right. If compounding needs a big base to really take off and you don't have it yet, the advice isn't give up. It's start exactly where you are today. But, and this is crucial, have a concrete escalating plan to grow that base systematically over time.
Systematically, meaning not just randomly saving when you feel like it.
Exactly. It needs structure. The sources use this bricklaying analogy. Think of every dollar you save and invest as one brick. Right now, your job isn't to admire the tiny return it earns. Your job is to lay another brick and another consistently,
Building the foundation.
building the foundation, brick by single brick. You have to prioritize laying those bricks over, say, worrying about the fancy fixtures or the paint color.
Yeah.
Those are the market returns right now. Foundation first.
Which means the most valuable thing you have early on isn't some fancy trading app or stock tips.
Nope. It's your personal discipline, your
Wow.
ability to stick to the plan. And here's the encouraging part. You don't necessarily need a huge salary to start this. You just need the mental toughness to save and invest something, anything, consistently, whatever your income is.
So discipline matters more than income, at least initially.
In terms of getting started and building the habit, absolutely. Look, if you're making, say, $1,000 a month take-home pay, saving 10%, that's $100 a month. That is a vital start
Why vital?
because it builds the muscle. It proves you can do it. He starts laying those first few bricks. But the plan can't end there. That's just step one.
What's step two?
As your income grows, maybe you get a raise, promotion, find a side hustle, the goal must be to aggressively ramp up that percentage. Don't just save the same $100. Aim higher. Can you hit 15%, 20%, maybe even 30% or more?
Because the faster you save.
The faster you build that principal base. And the sooner you build that base, the sooner compound interest stops feeling like some abstract theory in a book and starts feeling like a real, tangible force working in your life.
We talked about a specific moment, a technical term for when that shift happens, the crossover point. Can you remind us what that is and why it's such a big deal?
Right, the crossover point. It's that specific moment in time when the money your investments earn passively, just through market returns and interest.
Becomes more than the money you are actively contributing yourself each month or year.
Exactly. Think about a graph of your account balance. For years, it might look like it's going up in a fairly straight line, mostly driven by your deposits. But once you hit that crossover point, the exponential curve really kicks in. The graph starts bending upwards sharply.
And that acceleration, that bend in the curve, is what you call financial momentum.
That's it, financial momentum. It's this amazing, almost weird feeling you get when you look at your statement and realize, hang on, the market growth this month was actually more than the money I saved and deposited myself.
That must feel incredible.
It's a profound psychological shift because you've effectively reached a point where your money on its own worked harder, generated more wealth than your active saving efforts did for that period. You've successfully hired your money, and it's finally earning its keep, big time.
But we have to be realistic about getting there.
Absolutely. Keep the early stages in perspective. If your account is only growing because you are constantly feeding it money, if you haven't hit that crossover point yet, please do not get discouraged. That's normal. That's the necessary work.
You're still laying bricks.
You are still laying bricks. You are the only source of fuel for that engine during the hardest, slowest part of the journey. You have to mentally treat those early investment years almost like a supercharged savings account, where the primary goal is just maximizing the deposits.
The working for you part comes later?
It comes later, but it will come if you stick with the bricklaying.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate reward for doing all that unsexy work we talked about, the consistent saving, the boring but reliable investing, the relentless patience.
And when it does arrive, what does that true wealth built through compounding actually give you? It's not just about a big number, is it?
No, the sources are really clear on this. The final number is great, but what it truly buys you is, well, three things primarily: time, peace of mind, and
Okay,
choices.
break those down. Time.
Time. Because eventually you may no longer need to trade the majority of your waking hours just to earn the income you need to live. The system does it for you.
Peace of mind.
Peace of mind. Knowing that you have this financial engine running in the background, generating income automatically, that dramatically reduces the fear of, say, losing your job or facing a big unexpected expense. There's a safety net you built yourself.
And choices.
Choices.
Yeah.
Real freedom. The freedom to decide where you want to live, what kind of work you want to do, or if you want to work at all, how you spend your days, without financial desperation forcing your hand. Compound interest, once it hits that momentum phase, gives you incredible freedom if you let it. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. Okay, so this deep dive hopefully has peeled back some of the maybe overly simplistic or magical thinking around compounding.
Yeah, replacing it with the more grounded, practical view, like financial engineering almost.
Right. Compounding is incredibly powerful, maybe the most powerful force in finance. Yes. But, and it's a big but, it demands serious patience. It demands relentless consistency, especially when you're starting small.
Absolutely. It rewards the steady, the diligent, the person who focuses on consistently adding those bricks, not the flashy gambler trying to hit home runs every time.
That initial phase is slow, it can be discouraging, it definitely demands effort, but just the act of starting, of stacking those bricks, maybe quietly, month after month, even if it feels small.
That simple act puts you so far ahead, miles ahead of the vast majority of people who never even start, because they're waiting for some guarantee, some easy button, some magic acceleration that honestly just doesn't exist for the small investor right out of the gate.
So the goal isn't necessarily to get rich quick.
Not at all. You don't need to get rich next year or even in the next 5 years. You just need to commit. Commit to staying in the game long enough. Long enough for that math, the power of exponents, to finally inevitably tip in your favor.
Long enough to build that principle so large that even those seemingly small percentage returns start churning out really significant, life-changing amounts of dollars. Keep your eye on reaching that crossover point.
Exactly. And here's something to really think about, a final thought. When that math does finally tip in your favor, when you hit that crossover point and beyond, it's not just your money that's compounding.
What else is compounding?
Your confidence, your belief in your own ability to manage your finances, your discipline muscle gets stronger, your proven commitment to delayed gratification. All of that compounds too. It creates this positive feedback loop that impacts your entire life, your future choices, your sense of control. That maybe is the real return on investment.